Spirit, one God, amen. And lest I should be exalted above measure by the abundance of the revelations, a thorn in the flesh was given to me, a messenger of Satan to buffet me. Lest I be exalted above measure, concerning this thing I pleaded with the Lord 3 times that it may depart from me. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore most gladly I will rather boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Therefore I take pleasure in the infirmities, in reproaches, in needs, in persecutions, in distress, for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Okay, everyone know about St. Paul, thorn in the side, pleads 3 times. Okay, and then he gets that response from God. My grace is sufficient for you, my strength is made perfect in weakness. And then after that, St. Paul is like, I'm happy to boast in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. Okay, so the contemplation is St. Paul struggled with a thorn in his flesh, and often believed to be a permanent physical ailment. Even after asking God 3 times to remove it from him, it remained. It was only after God answered him that he immediately accepted it and saw it as a blessing, something to boast of. The discussion question for the 2 groups, so get nice and close so we can get something through, something nice out of it. We'll have a 5-minute timer, and then I want to answer from each side. Okay? The discussion question: is it necessary to hear God's answer to our prayer in order to accept our thorn in the flesh? Tricky. Is it necessary to hear God's answer to our prayer in order to accept our thorn in the flesh? Because it says immediately after he was answered, so he pleaded 3 times for it to be removed. The 3rd time, Christ told him, my grace is sufficient for you, my strength is made perfect in weakness. And then straight away he's like, I'll boast in my infirmities. But the first 3 times was pleading to remove it. Then God said, I'm made perfect in your weakness. So is it only after the prayer is answered that we accept that thorn? Or can we accept it without the prayer being answered, or can we accept a problem that comes to us, can we accept it straight away and thank God for it? Or do we have to plead for it to be removed? And then once it's answered, we accept it, which is tricky because how's it answered? Where unlike St. Paul, Christ doesn't come and tell me, I'm good, you're good, and he doesn't come and comfort me. Okay, tricky. All right. We'll, some servants in each group will have the passage, so we can keep referring to it, and we'll put a 5-minute timer. Okay, at 7:45 we're back together. Okay. coming out with a positive at the end because things are taking the traffic.
I don't even know. I just came up.
Exactly what you said.
Wait, what was the question? What's the topic?
If it's necessary for God to give us an answer before we can accept the tribulation, the thorn in his side. The same things. There's a storm, God protects us.
Tim's going to give us a one-line summary from this side.
One line?
And Yusuf, you're going to give us a one-line summary from our side.
Oh, Yusuf. So can Yusuf start?
Nah, you start.
And then I'll just say what
Youngest
he
first.
said.
Youngest first. Yeah.
Okay, so what's the question is if we don't get an answer. Just tell me how. Pretty much we said whether we get an answer or not, that it's always God's wisdom. So his answer might be not yet, and that might just mean that maybe what we're asking isn't what's best for us, and he's saying that that's not for us, or the answer is no because this certain path that we think we really need leads us in the wrong direction. And then, yeah, that was one sentence. Thank you.
So yeah, similar along those lines is we said that the answer, like God's answer, is implied in what proceeds afterwards. So whether what you're asking for happens or doesn't happen, right, in the same way that you said, that is his answer. And so rather than asking for God to do something, you should ask God to do what's in his in your will, yeah. So that way you're always receiving an answer. It's just maybe not what the answer you wanted, hence why you feel like you didn't receive one. So it was all about perspective, but his answer is always received.
Thanks, guys. Oh, sorry. Well, welcome back to another week of St. Barbara's. I hear. Thank you. I hear attendance has been high for some reason for the last 3 weeks. It's not because of my absence, but we are back again, and we know the series is Back to the Future. So today we're actually very blessed. We have David Bashout. Now he's actually very qualified to give this talk. Do you know why? He's married. That's about it. Okay. So Back to the Future. The question today is, what do you wish you could have told your pre-married self? Okay. And I think that Dave himself has a lot of insight. For those of you that don't know Dave, a very smart man. So please listen up. And throughout the talk, the slider will be up. If your questions aren't answered today, there is a panel that's going to be happening, I believe, next week. So all the unanswered questions that have happened over the last 3 or 4 weeks will be addressed next week. But guys, please make David feel very, very welcome. Thank you.
Yeah, can everyone come forward? I don't like. Yeah. Yeah, everyone come forward. Everyone come forward. Just. Take your time, go. Ready? Alrighty. Name Father, Son, Holy Spirit, God. I'm always very blessed to come to St. Barbara's. It's like another home to me. However, this time they gave me a very, very difficult topic to talk about. And as Andrew was saying, the topic is, what do you wish you could have told your pre-marriage self? Now, a topic like this takes a lot of wisdom, knowledge, and experience, which I definitely don't have. And so I thought about how we would address this topic, and I spoke to a lot of people who've been married for a long time, spoke to a lot of the fathers of the church to get their experience, and to see what they say, because they hear, problems and issues all the time. So I'm going to share with you a couple of answers. Now, these answers are some from the fathers, some from friends who've been married for 10 years, 5 years, and also some from people who are not in our church, like not from the Coptic church, just outside. And I just wanted to see, I asked people at work, just want to see what their opinion was. What do you wish you could have told your pre-marriage self? And so if we go just quickly through the list, some of the responses I got was, I wish I had known that being in love is not an adequate foundation of building a successful marriage. Others told me how to solve disagreements without arguing. Apologizing is a sign of strength. Some said, I wish I had known that forgiveness is not a feeling. An interesting one was, I wish I had known that toilets are not self-cleaning. Others were that we need a plan for handling our money, which I thought was a smart one. One person told me, I wish I had known that I was marrying into a family, not just marrying that person, but marrying into a family. Some other responses were spirituality is not equated with going to church, that the personality profoundly influences behavior. So someone's personality influences their behavior in the future. That marriage takes work, and even though we all know that marriage takes work, it's a lot more work than you actually think it needs. The last two were, I wish I had known to remember the commands of the church, and that married life on social media isn't real. And so what we see on social media all the time, that's not actually what marriage is. And so obviously I can't go through all of them today, and there was a lot, but I just put the top 12 that I got. So I've picked a couple. I've picked two, and then if time permits, we can pick a third one or a fourth one. If Bashout tells me we have enough time. If we don't have enough time, we can cut it. The first one I thought we'd talk about is, I wish I had known that being in love is not an adequate foundation of building a successful marriage. And it's a bit contrary to what you would think, because if you were in love, that's why you essentially got married. But what we need to remember is that being in love is an emotional and an obsessive experience. Emotions change and obsessions fade. A lot of research says that the being in love phase lasts about 2 years. For some people it's a little bit more than 2 years, for others it's less than 2 years, but 2 years is about the average of being the in love phase. And then after that, after you get out of this emotional high, all those aspects in your life that you disregarded during that moment in time that you're in love starts to show. All those things start to make a difference. But let's agree on one principle first. All right? All humanity, all of us, we are created with a deep, deep desire to love and to be loved. All right? We all have this desire to love and to love someone else. And we know this because we are made in the image of God. True? And God is love. St. John says, Beloved, let us love one another, for love is of God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. So without getting all theological, God and love are connected. You can't have love without God, and you can't have God without love. We are made in the image of God, so we have this connection of wanting to be loved and to love. Okay? Just basics. The problem is, the world around us shows us a complete opposite side of love. Okay? They show us relationships, marriages, broken up, social media. You hear all the expressions that men are stubborn, women nag, and you just try to understand that where is this love in marriage, right? This is what the world shows us. And so my question to you is, if I earn so much to be loved, and my wife yearns so much to be loved and to love, then why doesn't everything just work out? If I want to love so much and be loved, and she wants the same, then why doesn't everything just work out? Yeah? If our intentions are there to be loved and to love, then why doesn't it always work out? And part of the answer is that we were made differently. Yeah, men and women are different. And before we get into the promises, men, our job is to love as Christ loved the church. And to do not just the big things, but all the small things make a difference. You know, I remember when I got married, so my wife's not here, but she's probably watching me. She's not here, but I can say some stories. So I remember when we got married, I found out that my wife loves bubble tea, right? It's an obsession, she loves it. And just times where I would pick up some bubble tea on the way from home and drop it off, like when I get home, would make a world of a difference. It would have cost me $6, $7. Like, it's not such a big thing. But to her, that is a sign of love, okay? And so men, our responsibility is to love as Christ loved the church, to do the small things. Don't think of the big things, just small things. Think of a bubble tea. Women, your role is to make men feel like superheroes. We want to feel that all our dumb little ideas make a difference. That's just how we were created. We're dumb. But we want to feel that you accept that dumbness. And every guy will tell you, you know, we just want to feel that I come up with an idea and you just go with it even though you might think that it's not, you know. So it's very simple. Men love as Christ, women appreciate, should be easy, yeah? But unfortunately, it isn't. And to help my analogy, I'm going to share a story, okay? Just bear with me. My story's going to be very messy, so I'm going to do it without microphone. All right. Mr. Potato Head, can everyone hear me?
Just for the online, sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry. I might stand here. I'm sorry if I make a mess, but... All right. Yeah, get to eat them. No, it's okay. All right, so I got Mr. Potato Head and Mr. Potato Head, okay? Hi, Bona. You came at the worst time. All right. So just Bona's on the page, so I don't feel very silly. We're talking about being loved and feeling loved, okay? And just little analogy. So I got Mr. Potato Head and Mr. Potato Head, okay? And we all know their little story, but for the sake, I'm going to just tell you their story, all right? Mr. Potato Head and Mr. Potato Head met when they were at university, all right? He graduated with IT and business, had a nice car, she was attracted to him, she thought he was a nice guy, good personality, and he thought she was a beautiful lady, so they got together in university and they started the dating process, all right? When they were dating, they were super careful to make sure that none of the stuff inside would fell out, right? So they'd go on a date, they'd go sit down together, they'd eat, they'd talk, none of the stuff fell out. They got engaged, then they ended up getting married. When they got married, all right, they hit a bump. Sorry. They hit a bump. They hit a bump. She looked at him, she's like, what was that? Oh, I have no idea. Okay, pass it on, keep going. They went on a couple more months, and they hit another bump, and another bump, another bump. And so, sorry. Yeah. So when they hit a bump, she turns and she's like, hey, I didn't know this about you. And he's like, Well, I didn't know this existed till you showed up. I never had this come out of me. Okay, they keep going. And then they go on with life, and another occasion comes in life, and they hit more bumps. And more bumps, right? And eventually, they started realizing all this stuff is coming out of them, that the other person was convinced the other person was bringing out of them. So Mrs. Potato Head goes to her sister, which is what usual females do. They'll go to their sister, right? And again, I'm generalizing, so apologies. Goes to her sister. Hey, you want to imagine? He's so impatient. He doesn't believe in me. He's this, he's that. I didn't know before we got married. The guy, obviously because guys don't like talking to other people, goes to the mirror. He stands in front of the mirror and he's like, you don't believe, I could not believe she is so this and she's that. And they go through life and they're constantly, I won't do it anymore, sorry. They're constantly hitting, they're constantly hitting bumps, right? Do you have a microphone? They're constantly hitting bumps, yeah? And here's the important part. He is fully convinced that she brings out the brown stuff in him, yeah? And he is fully convinced that she brings out the opposite, right? So she brings out the bad stuff in him, and he's convinced that she brings out the bad stuff, right? But what we need to remember is that we all have stuff inside us, all of us, right? Some of us might be impatient, some of us might have some OCD. We all have stuff inside of us. And for most of us, the most significant bump in our life is marriage. That's when we start to see the first bump in our life. But remember that marriage brings out the good and also brings out the bad in you. And then the devil starts to play with your mind, and he says, if only you married the right person. It was because you married the wrong person. And he starts to play the card of the right person myth. You married the wrong person, which doesn't exist. The right person myth does not exist, okay? Because if you're looking for the right person and the right person is also looking for the right person, then it doesn't work out, right? Because if I'm looking for this person and that person is for me, right? But I end up marrying another person. So then I married someone else who was meant to marry someone else. And so because of my silly decision, I just stuffed up the whole cosmetic marriage for the entire world. Doesn't work, right? But what we need to remember is that all of us have stuff in us, okay? And so you think, so everyone then comes and says, I wish I knew. I was so in love. And the first thing that we said, the first topic that we're saying is, I wish I knew, right, that love is not the foundation of just a marriage. And so you think, what do we do? What do I do? I was in love and I got married. Tabamale. What do I do? And the answer comes from the wisest person who's ever come on the earth. Who is? Second wisest person who's ever come on the earth. Solomon. Thank you. Didn't think smarter than I. Solomon, right? Solomon says in Proverbs 4:23, he says, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Solomon is a very wise man, and he says a lot of wise things in his books. But there is nothing that he has written where he says, above all else. When someone says above all else, it means focus, keep an eye. Yeah? Above all else, guard your heart. What does this verse mean? It means that the way I respond to my boss at work, where did that come from? The way we respond to our Sunday school kids, where did that come from? The way I respond to my wife or my husband when they do something or say something, where did that come from? When I get bumped in my marriage, where did that come from? You know, Jesus himself said, those things which proceed out of the mouth come from the heart, and they defile a man. For out of the heart proceeds evil thoughts, murders, adulteries, fornicators, thefts, faultiness. Everything proceeds from the heart. So we need to know how to guard our heart. And so the answer to the problem today, to the first, I wish I had known, right? The answer to the first problem, which I wish I had known that being in love is not an adequate foundation, is we need to learn how to guard our heart and to watch what comes out. In Matthew 7, verse 3 to 5, I'm going to change the words of brother. I want you to change it into spouse. And if you do that, it reads, "And why do you look at the speck in your spouse's eye, but do not consider the plank in your own eye? Or how can you say to your spouse, let me remove the speck from your eye, and look, a plank is in your own eye? Hypocrite, first remove the plank from your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your spouse's eye." Okay? And so that is one of the things that we can consider doing when we're thinking of, I wish I had known. So if I go back quickly to the list of I wish I had known, we did the first one, which is I wish I had known that being in love is not an adequate foundation of a successful marriage. The next one we'll touch on is I wish I had known, and this one was actually told to me not by a priest, but by a friend. It was like, I wish I had known that I need to remember the commands of the church. I was wondering, like, you need to remember the commands of the church. Something happens in every relationship that the person that is able to bring out the most joy in me is also able to bring out such anti-joy from me. Someone who can portray so much love can also bring out so much anger. You know, we hear on the news, you hear things like, you know, this person stole $1 million. Oh, it's okay. You know, God's going to forgive him. You hear someone who's convicted for a felony and is going to prison, and they're like, oh, God be with him. And then, and Bruno might correct me if I'm wrong, a husband leaves the toilet seat open, and the wife chucks a tantrum, and he's so disrespectful, he's such a jerk, doesn't understand me, he never thinks of me, and it's gone from 0 to 100. The wife scratches the man's car, and he's like, look, she's so irresponsible, I should never leave her my car, she should drive a bike to work, unbelievable. And you think, like, this person was someone that you loved. Like, leaving the toilet seat open or a tiny scratch in the car, it's not such a big deal. What do we need to remember? When occasions like this happen, and I'm talking more to people who probably aren't married yet, or even those who just got married, remember that these situations are going to happen. And when this happens, we need to remember the commands of the church. Do you guys know why in the Coptic church, in a marriage, like during the ceremony, we don't have vows? I remember, like, when I got married, one of my dental assistants at work asked me, she's like, you guys don't do vows? Like, you don't have vows like everyone else does. I'm like, no, we don't. Does anyone know why we don't have vows? I'll tell you. We don't have vows because our promises are not between each other. Our promise is to God. So when we stand before the altar and Abuna reads out the commandment, he's reading out to the commandment to the man, to the woman, and then we kneel down before the altar, and that's our promise to God, that I promise God that I've agreed to what Abuna just told me. And so if we go through the commands, men, you need to memorize Ephesians 5:25 to 33. It says, husbands, love your wives just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. Husbands ought to love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. After all, no one ever hated his own body, but they feed and care for their own body, just as Christ does the church. This was the promise that each one of us agreed and told God that I promise I will fulfill this promise. Women, Ephesians 5:22. Wives, submit yourselves to your own husbands as you do to the Lord. For the husband is the head of the wife, as Christ is the head of the church. Now as the church submits to Christ, so also wives should submit to their husbands in everything. And so if you start to think about who you made the promise to, it changes your perspective. Because it doesn't matter if my wife keeps up to the bargain of her promise. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if she does it or if she doesn't. Because I didn't promise her. I promised God that I would love her as much as Christ loved the church, regardless of if she did her promise or not. A vow, though, if we did a vow, then I promise her and she promises me, then technically we can argue and say, which a lot of unfortunate times happens, say, well, I'm not doing this because she's not doing that. Or she doesn't do this because he didn't love me. Or he did this and I did that. When she does this, I will do that. But that is completely contrary to what the Coptic Church and what Christ teaches us. It doesn't matter what my wife does or what my husband does. What we need to remember, and what we should say is, I wish I knew, or I wish I remember, is that my promise was to God. Regardless and irrespective of if my second half abides by their promise or not. I remember when we got married, when we came back from our honeymoon, my dad gave me a present, which was a Bible. And on the inside of the Bible, the first page it said the promises of the man and promise of the wife, and it said, David remember, and then Monica remember. And so this is like our family Bible. Every time you open it up, you remember these promises. We should remember these promises. I know one of my friends actually took it to the next level. In their bedroom, above their bed, they've got a beautiful cross in the middle, and then on his side, they printed out the promise, framed it, and put it up on his side. They printed out the woman's promise, framed it, and put it up on her side. And so every night before they sleep, regardless if they're upset or if they're angry from each other, it reminds him who my promise is to. My promise is to God to love her. And it reminds her, obviously, my promise is to God and not to him. And so I think the answer is, I wish I had known when anything happens, I wish I had known that I need to remember the commandment of the church is the commandment to God and not to my spouse. Be sure, how am I going? Am I okay? Yeah? One more? Okay, go. So I was going to get you guys to pick one or the other. And the next one was, I wish I had known either I need to be the person I'm looking for, which is a really interesting concept, or how to solve disagreements without arguing. Do I have time? Yeah? You sure? Okay. We'll start with, I wish I had known I need to be the person I'm looking for is looking for. Sounds like a very confusing statement. Let me ask you before we jump into it. If I were to open the Bible for some marriage advice about how to find the right person, where would I look? How much advice does the Bible give me about finding the right person? I couldn't find any. Maybe I'm wrong. I couldn't find any. Bible never told me this is how you find the right person. But does that mean the Bible doesn't care? Does that mean, God doesn't care about us finding the right person? If we maybe change our framework, instead of how do I find the right person, into how do I become the right person, then you'll find a lot of advice in the Bible. Because every one of us is looking for a person, or was looking, for those who are married, engaged, was looking for a person, or is looking for a person. And that person is also looking for a person. So I need to be the person that I'm looking for. I told you guys at the start that this talk, I needed a lot of wisdom, so I spoke to a lot of fathers. And there's also a book that is actually called I Wish I Had Known by a pastor called Andy Stanley. And in this book, the pastor tells a story about a young girl. This young girl grew up in the church, spent her whole life in the church. Sunday school, meetings, attending church on Sundays, communion. She did everything right. Eventually she goes to college, which is our equivalent of university. She goes to university, and she had to move away from home, so she went to uni. And when she got to uni, she started living the uni life. She let down her hair a bit, you know, nothing out of the ordinary. She didn't deny her faith, okay? But she started to step outside of the boundaries that she initially always had. She started the dating scene, she started the party scene, a little bit outside of her boundaries that she had her entire life. So a very common story to what we hear this day and age. She eventually graduates and she comes back home. She starts working and she's still living the life. Okay? She's still living the life. Didn't deny her Christianity. She's still a Christian, but she's living the life. Right? One day at an event, she meets a guy. And this guy, in her own words, is the total package. He's got the looks, he's got the car, he's got the degree. And on top of everything, he's a Christian. And a really devout, strong Christian. Devout enough that his faith affects how he does his day-to-day work, including dating. Affects how he dates and what he does and what he doesn't do in dating. This is everything she's ever wanted. He is the total package. So she runs home, she's skipping home, she's on cloud 9, and she goes home, opens the door, sees her mum. Mum, you won't believe, I found this guy, and he's this, and he's perfect, and he's lovely, and he's a Christian. And he's got the car, and he's got this, and he's perfect, and he speaks. And her mum looks at her, and as hard as it was for her to say, says to her, a guy like that isn't looking for a girl like you. Ouch. Yeah, it's a tough one, right? A guy like that isn't looking for a girl like you. And she fell to the floor in tears, in agreement. She agreed. Because the person that she was looking for wasn't the person that was looking for her, because of the way that she changed her lifestyle. He was the total package, but that total package wasn't looking for the person that she was. Each one of us knows the type of person that we want in a marriage, the type of life, the type of person that we want to spend with. Why then do we not, before we get married, become that person? Unfortunately, a lot of the time is, when I meet this person, I'm going to be a loving guy. When I meet my spouse, I'm going to be patient. You know, I don't need to work on my temper because I'm going to find someone who is so caring and is not going to make me get angry at all. Which never happens, because as soon as you get married, I promise you, your temper is going to rise. Yeah? And so we start to think, you finally meet the right person, but you are the wrong person. And so obviously, I'm not going to leave it like that. You think, what do we do? What do I do? If I'm at this stage in my life, what do I do? And the answer is, we need to start working on ourselves. If I'm looking for a patient person, I need to be a patient person. If I'm looking for a loving person, I need to be a loving person. Abuna Anthony Messiah was saying in one of his sermons that when he got married, him and his wife agreed that they would memorize 1 Corinthians 13. They memorized the whole chapter, which is basically the chapter on love. And if there's anything that we can take away, from this, how to be the right person. If you want to be the right person, memorize this chapter. Memorize the 7 ways of love. Love is patient. Love is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not boast. Love is not proud. Love does not dishonor others. Love is not self-seeking. Do not just wait and say, one day I'm going to be the right person. It doesn't work. You know, a wise man once said, a nice quote that I read, he said, there aren't really marriage problems. There's no real marriage problems, obviously besides the real serious ones. There's no real marriage problems. He said, there are single people problems that we take into our marriage. For example, I'm an impatient person. I'm impatient. When I'm single, doesn't matter, because I'm talking to Sammy, and I'm impatient, he frustrates me, leave him. And I'll just go to the next person, talk to Mina, and I'm impatient, and he bothers me, I'll just leave him. And I'll just walk away, and if all of you annoy me, I'll just jump in my car and I'll leave. I'm single, it doesn't matter, right? But when you're married, and you're an impatient person, and you're 24/7 face-to-face with someone, what's going to happen? Bump, bump, bump. All the lovely things are going to start coming out. And so we need to start practicing these things, so when I meet the right person, I get excited to tell my parents, and that person is also excited to tell their parents at the same time. I need to be the person that the person I'm looking for is looking for. And in order for me to be the person that I'm looking for is looking for, I need to memorize the 7 ways of love. And one of the ways is to practice the 7 ways of love. Okay? Alright. I promise I'll only do one more, just to not to take too much of your time. Last one I'll talk about is an interesting one, which is, I wish I had known how to solve disagreements without arguing. This is more for those who are married, but also to prepare those who aren't married yet. When you're in the dating process, yeah, a couple of you guys listening carefully. When you're in the dating process, right, it never crosses your mind that you're ever going to have any major disagreements. Because you're so in love. And we said at the start, the first one that we spoke about was, love is not a foundation of a successful marriage. It's important. You need to obviously be in love, and love is a great way to start a marriage, but it's not just a foundation. But unfortunately, when we're in love, we never see past that we're ever going to have disagreements or arguments. You know, you're willing to do whatever she desires, and she's willing to follow any of your crazy ideas. You know, you never think that you're ever going to have any problems. And I remember one of the priests I was talking to told me that every time he speaks to a couple who come to him with problems, they're like, "But Abuna, we're so in love," and he's like, "That's great. What else?" He's like, no, you don't understand. We're so in love. Like, Romeo and Juliet need to take notes from us. Our relationship is something else. He's like, that's great. But what else? What after that? You're going to have conflict. He's like, no, not me. And Andy Chapman, in the book, he's told a story of another couple that got married, went on their honeymoon, and during their honeymoon and their first year of marriage, they found themselves in some conflict. He thought one thing, she thought one thing. And the guy could never imagine or could never comprehend how illogical she was. And she couldn't comprehend that he was so stubborn. And it wasn't that they wanted to be harsh, but each one knew that my way or my concept is the right concept. Just like, why can't you see that? Just open your eyes. And both of them told him, no one had ever told us that conflict was a normal part of a marriage. There are no married couples who do not encounter conflict. We all do, right? For one simple reason, we're human. You know, as individuals, we have different desires, different likes, different dislikes. We have different upbringings. So, I'll share with you, for example, one story that when I got married, after we came back from honeymoon, we were sitting down in the house, whatever, I slowly started to realize that Monica loved watching TV, right? And her brothers are laughing at me. My wife loved watching TV, right? And to me, like I grew up, I didn't really watch TV. So to me, I was like, why am I watching TV? It looked like it's such a waste of time. I could be doing so many other things, so many more practical things. I don't need to watch TV. TV is a waste of time. And this became like a bit of conflict at the start. She's like, no, I need to watch TV. And she was arguing that TV was her way of relaxing at the end of a long day. You know, she'd work 12 hours, 14-hour shifts, and she'd come home, and I'm buzzing, waiting for her to come home, and she wants to, you know, sit down, calm down, watch some TV. That was her way. But my way was, let's go play some sport, let's go for a walk, let's build something in the house. I'm crazy. I'm energetic, right? And that is normal, and that is okay. It's okay for one person to want this and one person to want that, right? But the idea is, how do we resolve a conflict? And the first thing about how to solve a conflict is we must begin by accepting the reality that we will have conflicts, okay? Conflicts are not a sign that you married the wrong person. It simply affirms that you are human. Our ideas and our perceptions of life are affected about how our upbringing was, right? Some conflicts you're going to have are going to be major and some are going to be minor. You know, some minor conflicts are how the guy puts the dishes in the dishwasher. No, I don't like the plates from this way, I want the cups here. Small conflict. Some major conflicts are how many children I want, or if I'm going to have children, right? They're major conflicts. But once you've accepted the reality that we are going to have conflicts, we need to understand the concept of compromise, give and take. Compromise in a marriage is not only positive, but it's actually very necessary. Yeah? Compromise means finding a meeting place, right? And there are three ways that we can compromise. First, meeting in the middle. You know, we listen to each other, sit, you listen, you hear each other's opinions, and you come to a common ground. Another way to compromise is I meet on your side. Again, we sit, we listen, and on this occasion, we agree or we decide to do one person's opinion. Doesn't mean that I don't think my opinion's right. It just means a total sacrifice from my end to go with what my wife would prefer, rather than doing what I would like. And the third way is meeting later. At the moment, I can't comprehend how we're going to solve this problem. The moment, arguing, you have your opinion, I have my opinion, I can't possibly comprehend. Let's agree to meet with this idea tomorrow and come back and discuss. You'll be surprised how much, maybe even an hour, to meet in an hour to discuss will go. And I think we just need to always remember that our differences, and we all go through conflicts differently, yeah? So I wish I had known how to solve disagreements without arguing is sometimes self-sacrifice. Coming to a compromise, but also self-sacrifice. Remembering the commandment, remembering who you made your promise to. Doesn't really matter what we're arguing about. I wish I had known. And this was someone that actually, like when I asked, as I told you guys at the start, I asked friends and church fathers and whatever, I wish I had known. Someone actually told me, he's like, I wish I had known how to solve disagreements without arguing. And so these are one things that can come up in pre-marriage. And so if we're just going to quickly summarize. First one was, I wish I had known that being in love is not an adequate foundation of building a successful marriage. And what we're going to do for that one is memorize Proverbs 4:23. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything flows out of it. I wish I had known, always remember the commandments of God. Men, Remember Ephesians 5:22, women. Remember Ephesians 5:22 to 24. Remember that I made the promise to God and not to my spouse. I wish I had known I need to be the person I'm looking for is looking for. Memorize 1 Corinthians, the 7 ways of love. Don't wait to meet the right person, but become the right person yourself now. And the fourth one was, I wish I had known how to solve disagreements without arguing, understand how to compromise, meet in the middle, meet on your side, or meet later. And glory be to God forever and ever, amen. I know there was a lot others, but like a lot of others that we could have discussed, but just because of time.
Alrighty, thank you,
Pass.
David. I told you you wouldn't
To Andrew.
disappoint. Now, I know it's at a relationship series, so no one's brave enough to really ask out a question. Okay, so we've got just Tim and Bez. So there's just a few questions.
Of course.
Okay.
But Abun here. Abun is much more. Guys,
If we don't get through them today, obviously next week we have the panel as well, a very elite and experienced and wise panel. So the first question is, if I'm not married or dating, how can I actually figure out what's in him or her so that I'm not shocked in marriage? So I think it's referring to like the
what's in him or what's in her? Yeah. I think before you think about what's in her or think about what's in you. Again, the concept of be the person that I'm looking for is looking for. Instead of thinking what is in her, you be what you are looking for in her. If you, for example, if a guy is looking for someone who is patient, be patient. If a guy is looking for someone who is caring, be caring. If a guy is looking for someone who's coming to church all the time on time, come to church on time. Instead of looking for that, be that person, and you will essentially attract that same. Same with the story that was about the young girl, when she found the perfect match. When she found that ideal person, unfortunately, she was at a stage in her life where she wasn't the ideal person. But if she was, then everything would have worked out, potentially. So we just need to remember, be the person that you're looking for is looking for, instead of looking what that other person's characteristics are. And then obviously once you found someone, that's where you take your time. There's no rush when it comes to a marriage. Marriage is a sacrament in our church that we take very, very seriously. And any sacrament is really important. So don't rush into a marriage. If you find someone, spend the time. Ask the difficult questions. Don't be like Mr. Potato Head and Miss Potato Head, who were going through the entire time without allowing bumps to happen. Speak about different scenarios. I know, for example, like when we were getting married, we had to do the marriage course, and part of the marriage course in the church now is different scenarios that you will discuss. If this happens, how would we address it? Don't try and tiptoe around each other, because when you tiptoe around each other and you get married, first thing that's going to happen, the first bump, because we always get bumped in marriage. As soon as you hit the first bump, that's when the true colors come out. So try and prepare, I guess, for that by discussion.
second question. Why
I
is
hope I
it?
answered that question, sorry.
Hope so. You did, by the way. Why is it that we really hold our partner or spouse to the highest standards? Isn't it okay to have to have expectations of them?
Look, again, this is just just me answering personally. The concept of expectations is always something that I find can go downhill really quickly. Because when we have expectations of my spouse, it's not bad to expect that my spouse is loving and caring. But if I expect my wife to have a cooked meal on the table when I get home, and there's no cooked meal, that's an unrealistic expectation, and my wife is also working full-time. Yeah? So expectations can be bad and can be good. Sometimes when we put expectations to each other, like spiritual expectations, we can encourage and motivate each other to a spiritual lifestyle. Yeah? So if we expect each other to be reading the Bible every day, and if I'm lazy, it's nice for my wife to pick me up. Hey, don't forget that we said we were going to read the Bible. Don't forget that we need to pray. Don't forget that we're going to attend that one early liturgy a week. That's a healthy expectation. An unhealthy expectation is where we expect a bit too much out of our spouse to the extent that it starts to cause problems in our marriage. You know, she expects me to do X, Y, and Z. I expect, instead of expecting, try and understand. Because a marriage is, as you said, it's a compromise, give and take. In expectations, sometimes we look to the spouse and it causes us to judge. You didn't do this, and you start to judge them. Remember the promise that you were promised to do before God. You know, expectations are good to a certain extent when you're using each other to build yourself spiritually, but outside of that, sometimes it can get a bit dangerous. Again, I guess your confession fathers can help.
Pretty good. Well, I think this will be actually no, second last. If I'm the wrong person, does that mean I have to change my personality? What if I find that hard?
If you're the wrong person, do you have to change your personality?
I'll read the question again.
Thank you.
If I'm the wrong person, does that mean I have to change my personality? What if I find that hard?
Look, I think if we're the wrong person, we need to sit with ourselves and self-evaluate. If I want a perfect marriage and I'm not there now, what do I need to do in my life? It's not harm to sit down and look in the mirror. If I'm the wrong person, why am I the wrong person? Am I not doing X, Y, and Z? How is my service? How's my spiritual life? How's my confession? Have I confessed recently? It's not bad to look in the mirror or to go to my confession father and to get advice. You know, our confession father helps us to become the person that we want to be. And so if you're the wrong person at the moment, there's no harm in sitting and looking at the mirror and be like, I'm the wrong person because of X, Y, and Z. What do I need to do? And if you have the answers, great, work at it. Is it hard? Of course. Is the devil going to attack you? Absolutely. But you always got to think of, put yourself to higher regard. I'm doing this because I want to become this, because I want my marriage to be this. If you don't know the answers to your X, Y, and Z about how to become the right person, our lovely confession fathers are there. Abuna, I'm impatient. And I don't want to be because I want to find a wife who's patient. What do I need to do? Abuna, I have anger inside of me. I don't know what to do to get rid of anger because I don't want it to come up in my marriage. With the guidance of a priest and with a lot of matanyas and hard work, God will touch your heart. If He sees your desire to be that person, I'm sure that He will. Was there one more?
Yes, there is, sorry. If I think I'm the person I'm looking for, why am I still single? Valen.
Time, my friend. Like, I think, as I said, I was saying in the talk, that do not rush a marriage. Do not rush trying to find the right person. Be the right person, and the right person will also find you. There's no rush. When we rush a marriage, unfortunately, we start to get clouded because I'm trying to get married, I'm trying to find the right person, and then I find someone, and even though I see some sort of red flags, and later on, be like, I wish I could have just. When you start to see that, it might not be the right person, and that's okay. You know, if I'm in a dating process, and that's okay. There's no harm in that. But sometimes when I'm rushing to get married, and that's just, I want to do it, you meet someone, they might not be the right person, but that's okay, I'm going to be patient, I'm going to be understanding, and then you hit the first bump, you let it go, then you hit the second bump, and you say, because of you, and then problems start. So I think, first and foremost, let's work on ourselves. Let's be the person that I want to be before Christ. So when I kneel down before the altar, at the sacrament, when I'm there before the altar and Abuna's saying the commandments, I can say and I can promise God before the altar that I'm going to be that man, regardless. Right? So let's just work on ourselves. Again, with your confession, Father, work on yourself to be that person.
Earlier in this, we mentioned like the vow, like we don't have vows. What is said by the for the man and women. I was just asking from, obviously, since I'm a man, from the man side of things. So the first line was like, love her as Christ loved the church. And so that's great, you can love someone, but sort of in a practical sense, how does that look? So you gave the example of like the acts of service or whatever, that's something simple. I'm talking like on a day-to-day sort of life as you go on together. You're not going to be buying bubble tea every day.
Of course, no, of course not. Like, I think, I've been married maybe 3.5 years now. If you think about how Christ loved the church, he sacrificed himself for the church. Live a life of sacrifice for your wife on a day-to-day basis. You see your wife is coming home really exhausted from work, and you got home there first, cook a meal. There's no harm in saying she has to cook a meal, right? You see that she's really stressed at work, take her out. Let's go out. You see that she's very passionate about something. There's a certain point that you guys are discussing, and she's really passionate about that point, and it really makes a difference to her, and it means a lot to her. What did Christ do to the church? Sacrifice himself. Sacrifice yourself. Humble yourself and say, even though I really want this, but I promised God at the altar that I'm going to love as Christ loved the church. So it's okay. Let's do what you go with. And to be honest, you'd be surprised. Like a lot of the time when you humble yourself, you say, no, it's okay. Let's do what you want to do. She's sorry about, oh, what? No. Let's do what you want to do. I'm telling you many times. But the problems happen because I'm so stubborn and she's so stubborn. Right? We're both trying to get our points across. Okay? So, on a practical sense, just think of how you can make her life easier. Practically. Day to day. What can you do for her? She's struggling with a Sunday school lesson. Help her out. She needs motivation for prayer. Be that guide. Wants help with, just always sacrifice yourself, your time, your efforts. Be everything that she needs to be. And when she sees, Abuna was always telling me that when she sees that you are doing everything you can for her, everything, there is no way that she won't be able to submit herself to you and do everything she can for you. The problems happen is when, no, I want to do my way. I'm just not as sacrificial as Christ was to the church. I'm trying to do my own way. I hope that answers the question. A little bit, at least. Yeah?
Any other in the crowd?
So this is something that I think about quite often in our community. It's very common for you to say, you date for a year, they get engaged, a year later they're married, right? Yeah. And that's at that 2-year span. And that 2-year span is the same span that you said is when those heightened feelings of love and emotion are. Now, is it not like a risk that you never see the person's true personality pre-marriage, given that you are at that heightened love, and it's only after you're married and it's kind of too late that you're going to see, once the facade kind of drops?
Yeah. Obviously, Okay. Obviously, every marriage and every relationship is different. Some last for a little bit longer than 2 years. Some, as you said, last that 2-year period. But I think during that 2-year period, you need to be very honest with each other. Because as we said that, research says that 2 years is that buffer period where you're in that high. And after that 2-year period, from some is more, some less, it starts to come down, and those things that you neglected during that 2-year period start to make a difference. So I guess, my advice would be that during that 2-year period, the things that make a difference to you, don't push it aside just because you're in that love period. Yeah? Those things that make a difference to you, make it known. Again, in a loving way. Hey, this makes a difference to me. This is important to me. What do you think? How would you go about doing this if we encounter X, Y, and Z? Because when you discuss these principles, and during an engagement period, it's really stressful. You truly see someone's colors during the engagement period, because organizing a wedding is really, really stressful. There's time, really expensive, stress levels, you're heightened, you're seeing red, your wife wants to spend $20,000 on flowers, and you want to pull your hair out because you're going to throw it the next day, and yeah, right? So you have to be practical in the way you're doing things, and that's where you discuss. Like I remember, even just talking about flowers, like when we were getting married, we each decided what was one thing that was important for the other person. So say for instance, flowers was really important to my wife, and just for argument's sake, cars are really important for me, right? In those two scenarios, we wouldn't really push the boundaries of arguing. If this is what you want, okay, right? But with everything else, we try and come to some sort of agreement and compromise, right? As opposed to, you're going to spend $20,000 on flowers and I'm going to throw it the next day. That is so illogical. It probably is, but that's okay because it means something to her. Yeah? As much as it means to get $5,000 car for myself, it means something to her. So during this two-year period, you need to be honest. Don't palm it off and just say, no, it's okay, it's fine. I'll turn a blind eye. No, if something means something to you or something upsets you, I guess bring it up, but in a loving, kind, way to discuss it, because that's where you'd be able to come up with some sort of understanding. Because obviously, if you don't see eye to eye to a problem or a concept that came up, then you come back and you say, I wish I had known. But if we can discuss it earlier on, it makes a difference. Sorry.
Any other last? David will be around. He doesn't have anywhere to go. All right, guys. Big thank you to David, please. I told you he would not disappoint. Just some quick announcements. Tomorrow is the fast of. Very good. I love the enthusiasm. We actually have a liturgy every single day. If you want any of the times, please go reach out to any of the servants. We can send you the schedule. There is a New Zealand trip happening, a ski trip happening in July. I'll speak to someone about that, one of the servants once again. Tomorrow night, as you guys know, we have our wonderful book club, and tomorrow is a new book by Pope Shenouda on calmness, okay? Tuesday at 7 a.m. for all you, inspired people who are greater than I, the Run Club. Does anyone know where they're running from? Out of curiosity. Oh, Glen Alpine, run fast, okay? And the last thing, Wednesday night Bible study, they're going to continue with the book of Tobit, chapter 11, and tonight we have a prayer meeting at 9:15 in the church. It's optional, of course, but we'd love to see people here. Next week, to wrap up the series as well, we have a panel of, as David was saying, wise, experienced, and very, very amazing people that are coming next week. We did have a lot of questions over the last 4 weeks, so a few of them will be sorted out next week. We would love to see as many people. Just before we pray, I'll take a quick sorter, and then we'll wrap it up for the evening. That's enough. Here we go. So I can't get everyone in. I'll do. It's okay. It's a part of every photo. Sorry. You're gonna go. It's alright. Hello. That's alright. Alright, here we go. Ready? Alright. 1, 2, 3. Oh, sorry, Benny. Go for it. Here we go, guys. Ready? Go, tfaddal. Gorgeous. Stand up for prayer, please.